should be able to read this and have no issues, hey? Hey? All right. So this is the Moorhouse Murders. It's about killer couple David and Catherine Birnie. Is it Birnie?
Birnie.
They were responsible for a spree of murders in 86 where they killed 4 women. Both of these guys had a pretty rough start in life. David was born on the 16th of February in 51 to parents Margaret and John Birnie, which are your parents' names, Sasha. Yep, you psycho-developing people.
I'll lie.
They lived in a semi-rural suburb east of Perth in Western Australia. David's mother was an abusive alcoholic described as an unkempt woman with no love for her children or home, which is pretty common in these sorts of things, I would have said. Kate?
I agree. Sorry, I was burping.
An example of her behaviour was that she would often exchange sexual behaviours as a way to pay for things such as taxi fares.
Can we do that with Uber?
That would depend on your Uber driver.
Definitely dependent. Like, I mean, where you got to go that badly to where you're going to do that for a taxi fare?
Yeah, no, I think you could offer. I don't think they would be offended. I think they would get offers like that more often than you think.
I agree.
Yeah, definitely. You can't be an Uber driver and not expect.
So would she have to do that both ways, or would she get the taxi driver to wait, like while she was going to her destination, then when she got home?
No, I didn't hear much more about this than that particular statement from her community. But, you know, once the taxi driver's driven you where you've got to go and you're like, I'm broke, you want me instead?
Anyway, David's father, John, wasn't much in the way of a dad either, and it was said they lived in poverty due to John's back issues as a result of a genetic deformity. Genetic deformity, so was it like a hunchback or?
Yeah.
Okay. Their 6 children... 6 children were often left to fend for themselves with one report from the children's school friend that the fridge didn't even have a door so that to let the kids and the dog have easy access to food.
Wow.
So what was in replace of the fucking door?
There was no door.
So it was just a fridge.
So I imagine there'd be an open fridge with spoiled food. I don't know. This is coming from a person who was a child when they hung out at the Birnie house. So that would have just been something that really stuck out to them, was that there was no door on there. And the kids would probably just like, oh, that's just so the dog can come and eat and the toddlers that are waddling around can come and grab some food.
So everyone's sharing foods.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's probably spoiled because, let's face it, there's a door for a reason.
So the children were physically abused, but there's also rumours of amongst insects. Well, I'm sure there was plenty of insects. You got a friggin' fridge with everything open, you know.
With no door.
But worse than that, there was some incest going on there too. Authorities repeatedly removed the children from the home, and the family later moved to a different Perth suburb where David met and started a relationship with his next-door neighbour, Catherine Harrison. Good shit, guys. Now, Catherine...
I'm on the edge of my seat.
Oh, yeah. Well, you wrote it, so you know what's going on. Now, Catherine was only 2 years old when her mother, Doreen, died, giving birth to her baby brother, who also died 2 days later. So Catherine and her father, Harold, moved to South Africa for a time, but he found her to be difficult and sent her back to Australia to live with her grandparents. Her grandparents couldn't handle her either, so she was palmed off to her aunt and uncle, who eventually sent her back to live with the grandparents. This is where she lived next door to David Birnie. So it's just a whole bunch of neglect and palming off that's like led her to a...
Nothing stable and...
Yeah, so
that's terrible.
Obviously, you know, you've got someone that is nice to you. That's all it takes at that age.
Yep.
Everyone has treated you like shit.
She hasn't known love. She hasn't known nurturing.
Yeah, so someone's nice to
affection.
you and you're going to be like, wow, you're an awesome person. And you can totally see where that was the beginning of their connection, their insane connection. Like they just keep coming back to each other.
Catherine said that she found David to be charming and very interesting. They had great conversations and she just fell head over heels for him. Aww. David's parents then got divorced, and finally, after years on welfare intervention, the children were sent off to different foster homes. David became a ward of the state and lost touch with Catherine. At age 15, David became an apprentice jockey at Ascot Racecourse. So he's a short ass, was he?
If you see pictures, which we will make an Instagram, and I will put up pictures of this motherfucker, and he not only looks creepy as fuck, but he looks... I guess I shouldn't give him shit for how he looks because it might be simply from malnutrition and neglect. But he is this weedy looking thing. Like, he's little and he's super skinny.
He's fucker looking. He looks like a fucker.
Yeah, and
Yep.
he could definitely be a jockey.
Nothing against jockeys.
Read the next bit.
During his employment, there were reports that David physically harmed the horses, as well as a report that he exposed himself to a young woman. Okay. Was he exposing himself to the horses? Was that like the...
I don't think the horses would see that as abuse. I don't think they would quite understand what a penis in front of them means, since theirs is so much bigger. But the thing that I didn't quite understand about this bit was whether the reports... I couldn't figure out whether the reports were happening while he was working there or it all came out later after what happened next. Because you would think that would be enough to say, see you later, mate. You can't be a jockey if you're... I mean...
Well, they like to keep these things... Well, I'm not having a go at the race industry in particular, but lots of industries like to keep these things under wraps so they don't look bad.
But you could simply dismiss an apprentice, couldn't you?
Absolutely.
He wasn't a famous jockey or anything. He was a teenager, so...
Okay, so as a part of his employment agreement, he lived in a boarding house. 6 months into his employment, he broke into the landlady's room naked, wearing a stocking over his head.
Wow. This has escalated quickly.
He attempted to rape her but failed and ran away. This led to him being sacked. Like, I mean, that's pretty minimal punishment for that, but anyway.
But back in that time, you know, instead of going through all the police shit that you would have to,
just get rid
you'd
of
just
them.
be like, see you later,
them off.
mate. We don't need you
We're not
in our...
associating with you.
No.
I mean, even if you're not going to punish him, you should give him some support and help him through
And
that.
yeah,
You don't
I
need
couldn't
to
find
keep doing
anything
that.
on whether she pressed charges or anything, but, you know, read on. He finds his own way into the system, so...
He moved on to the petty crime and into... What? He moved into the... What the... Okay, hang on. What are you trying to say here? He moved on to petty crime. Okay. He moved on to petty crime and stacked up a pretty extensive rap sheet as a juvie for assault, burglary, and petty theft. Catherine and David reconnected at this time, of course, and Catherine left school and joined David in his life of petty crime, but it wasn't long before they were caught.
Fabulous decision.
Like, it really wasn't long. It was like, months. They sucked at petty theft, but they just kept going.
Well, they didn't seem to give a fuck.
No.
It wasn't really about getting away with it.
They definitely didn't.
They don't have that, like, if you know anything much about the brain, the way it develops is like in stages. And if you go through severe neglect, you don't really get past it's called the reptilian part of your brain. You don't go into the next stage, which involves cognitive thought and empathy and thinking about other people.
You act like a teenager with no...
They actually literally don't understand what they're doing is incorrect.
So very impulsive.
Yeah. In 1969, at age 18, the pair faced court and were charged with break-enter and theft of a safe at a drive-in theatre. David went to prison for 9 months while Catherine received probation because she was pregnant to another man. But then a month later, they both appeared before the Supreme Court and were charged with 8 more counts of theft, adding 3 years to David's sentence while Catherine gained 4 more years probation. In 1970, David escaped jail and met up with Catherine. They were at it again before...
Now, sorry. I couldn't find much about how he escaped prison. But back then, were prisons easier to escape from? Because I can remember 2 times in my life where I heard of people escaping prison. Isn't that insanely hard to do? Or is it because he would have been in one of those lower security prisons that basically just have a barbed wire fence?
Yeah, and I think in transition you can bribe the screws, or there's plenty of ways to get out, especially in 1970 before cameras and shit were everywhere.
It's 1970.
Yeah. So they were at it again before the year was out and arrested again in a stolen car that was found with explosive radios, detonators, and disguises. So they were gearing up.
They were definitely escalating.
I mean, they were ready at this point. They're ready to blow some shit up.
If they hadn't got caught, just imagine what their plans were and how many people would have been hurt if they hadn't been caught at that point.
So David got 2 years and Catherine got 6 months, and her baby was taken from her.
Now, that 2 years, I'm pretty sure was added to his original sentence because his sentence was much longer. He escaped from prison. You wouldn't just say, okay, go back for 2 years. I think that's 2 years on top of what he was...
Well, he had 3 years added to his 9-month sentence. So that's 3 years, 9 months, and then another 2 years. Convinced by a parole officer that her life would be better without David in it, Catherine got a job as a housekeeper and nanny with the McLaughlin family, and her baby was returned by authorities. Catherine became romantically involved with her employer's son, Donald McLaughlin, and when she became pregnant, they married on her 21st birthday in 1972.
Wow, she's only a baby still.
Yeah, she's an infant.
They had 7 children, but tragically their first child, Donnie Jr., was killed in the family's driveway as Catherine was saying goodbye to a friend who had been visiting. Yeah, I think I remember hearing it. She was like reversing out and running over.
That's
Like-
horrific.
Yeah.
That alone would, after what you've
Fuck with your
already
mind.
been through, wouldn't that just break you? Like, as mums, I know that would just break me into pieces. After everything you've been through, you finally have this amazing thing that you love.
And it's
And
taken away in an instant.
She watched it too. She witnessed it. So I'd say that would have, that's a really significant part of this case, because who knows whether that led her to just not care about human life, or to shut herself off, or to become really cold, because that is a horrific thing to witness.
So later the marriage was not going well. They were living in poverty when Donald couldn't work due to his back injury. Catherine or is this another back injury? Is she just attracted to dudes with back injury?
No,
that
it
was
was
the dad.
It was
That was the dad,
David's dad that
Oh,
had the
right,
back
right.
injury, and then her husband got a back injury.
Donnie's and David's. Catherine hated living in government housing and had had enough of everything at that point. Meanwhile, David had been released from prison and had married a woman called Kerry. They had a baby girl, Tanya. So she had 7 kids and he had 1.
Yeah.
Like, what time period is this?
Well, he was still in prison for a little while she was doing this, and then he got out and got married, and they just had 1 baby. I mean, there is
So
contraception.
how many children has she got at this stage?
So she had 7, but 1 died.
Yeah.
And then she had that 1 previously as well.
Okay,
So
yeah.
I wasn't sure if they included that in they had 7 children, but I'm assuming when they say they had 7 children, it was them
All
alone.
children. Oh, okay.
But I'm not sure. I couldn't find an exact number or the names or anything.
God damn. So David started having an affair with a 16-year-old girl. And it was 10 years into the marriage when Kerry decided this was finally enough and left David when this 16-year-old girl actually moved into his daughter's room.
No.
No, seriously. What this motherfucker did, okay, apart from... So he was having affairs through their whole marriage. Kerry knew about it, but sort of turned a blind eye. You know, she just kept
Sex
going.
is sex. Just let's
Yeah,
deal
every
with it.
relationship's different, and who knows what she was going through. But yeah, the last straw was basically when he came home one day with his 16-year-old girlfriend and said, he got his daughter Tanya, moved her out of her room into his room with his wife, and then moved into her room with his 16-year-old girlfriend. This is your new living arrangement.
That's just messed up on so many different
But
levels.
it shows his personality type. He's all
Yeah,
about the
fuck.
sex.
Yep.
Everything is to do with sex.
Sex and power, that's a
yeah,
real show
definitely.
of authority
The
right
power
there.
is
Just
definitely
bringing her back
developing.
into the home, being
Yeah.
like, this is it.
Yeah, just to waltz your 16-year-old girlfriend into the house, not like
How old's he at this stage? Sorry?
30.
Was it what year?
Yeah,
He's
be in his
late?
early 30s.
Yeah.
Early 30s,
mid-30s,
right.
Yeah. So soon after, David and Catherine reunited and had a 2-year-long affair before Catherine abandoned her husband and children to start a new life with David. This is when they moved into number 3 Moorhouse Street in
Willogy.
Willagee. Fuck you know how to pronounce that one. It's pretty important. They never married, but Catherine had her name legally changed to Birnie at this point. Is it Birnie? Birnie?
Yep, I actually had to go and find a news report so that I can
Hear them say it.
Because I was like, is it Birnie?
Oh,
Birnie. It's like, I'm going to sound American if I say Birnie. But it's not Bernie because
Americans
there's...
like you don't sound.
There's no
yeah.
E there.
So David was in and out of prison and actually shared a prison cell with his brother Jamie for a while, who was in prison for sexually interfering with his 6-year-old niece. So the incest continues. Jamie actually stayed with the couple when he got out of prison and later told of David's sex addiction and how he had been nearly raped by David in the middle of the night while he slept.
Okay, so I'll
Wow.
elaborate
This is
on
his
this.
brother.
This is his brother. This is little brother because David's the eldest. So, his little brother basically, so we know he's a pedophile, but David being the older brother obviously wielded some power over him. So he was having sex all over the place, like constantly, every day. It had to be every day. It had to be more than once
He was
a
a
day.
sex addict.
So in his times of drought, if you want to call it that, not like your 2-year drought, but like a 24-hour drought, he would ask his brother, "Would you like to have sex?" And his brother would, politely decline.
He told of how Catherine, this is Jamie telling this, is it?
Yeah.
Yes, of how Catherine was his 21st birthday present, Jesus Christ, as he had never had sex with a female before.
One of age,
What a
at
lovely
least.
caring brother.
Perhaps because
Yeah.
my brother was raping me and I wasn't interested.
Yeah, so he'd obviously lived a life of incest. He was a pedophile, but at the same time, he hadn't had sex with, a woman that was like, let's consensual sex. So, that also shows a side of David, which is like, here you go. Who wouldn't want this as a 21st birthday
Have my
present?
partner.
Here's your first sexual experience. Like, you can just tell that's, like, he would think that's an awesome present.
So by now it's getting close to 1986 and the couple have exhausted their sexual fantasies and began to discuss adding abduction and rape into their sex life.
As you do.
It's so now it's 1986 and they're both 36 years old. David is working at a spare parts yard, and on the 6th of October, a 22-year-old psychology student named Mary Nielsen comes to the parts yard and asks David about some tyres for her car. Seeing this as his opportunity, he convinces Mary that he has some at his house that she can have even cheaper. Mary thinks this sounds great, and they
Don't do
arrange
that.
to meet at a house. What?
Don't ever do that. The Wreckers is the cheapest car parts you're going to get. Don't do that. Even when it comes to Gumtree, if I'm buying something off Gumtree, I make Cameron go and get it.
Yeah.
If I'm buying something from Marketplace,
Yeah, so I
Cameron
can be
goes...
tied up in some fucking dungeon and like raped and tortured and shit. That's all good.
Because you just don't do... That's your first red flag. You're at a car parts yard.
Why do you need to go to someone else's house?
Like, you're literally
for car
buying
parts?
car parts, the cheapest you can get them. But then again, she was a student, so...
Well, it's not like he had a trusting face. She was a
And
bit naive.
motherfuckers like that, let's face it, they're always charming. They always have a way with words.
Agreed.
Right, so Mary thinks this sounds great, and they arrange to meet at his house that evening. Mary arrived at Bernie's door, so even after some time to like think about this shit, she still thought it was a good idea. Anyway, Mary arrived at Bernie's door, at the Bernie's door. At Bernie's? Isn't his name? Yeah, you've just written at Bernie.
Oh, did I?
Yeah, and at the agreed time and is invited in. As soon as the door closes behind her, David holds a knife to her throat.
Can I just point out as well, I didn't write it down because I was going to say it, but then I'm not the one speaking. So guess where he pulled the knife from? His Ugg boot.
Oh.
God damn.
Never trust someone who wears Ugg boots.
No, definitely not.
He and Catherine take Mary to a bedroom where she is chained, gagged, and repeatedly raped while Catherine watches and encourages David. See, like, oh, man. Yeah, okay. Later that same night, they put Mary in the car and drive her 50 k's away to Glen Eagle Forest, where David rapes her again. He then goes to his car, grabs rope, and using a tree branch, strangles poor Mary to death. Then stabs her in the heart for good measure and buries her in a shallow grave.
What the fuck?
So, what is Catherine like involved like in all of this, or is she scared of David? Do we know this at this point?
You probably got to...
Look, there's no mention of her having a fear. I think it's more to please him. She wants to give him what he wants. That's the feeling I got from a whole bunch of different reports that I read. She did show a little bit of remorse for these things, but I think her love for him and
to
his love
please
for
him
sex,
and keep him happy and
Exactly.
have him make her feel what she's craved her whole
okay.
life.
So it's a whole cycle there. She needs something from him. He wants something. She wants to give it to him. Like, and you can just sort of see how this is going to be this repetitive cycle of her just, doing things that she knows is not okay, but it's to give him his sexual gratification, which makes him happy. It's a fucked up love story. Like, it really is.
Speaking of fucked, okay, this next paragraph. So the next day, David drives to Mary's car and parks it across the road from Western Australia's police headquarters. But it still takes them 6 days to locate the car.
And that's once they realise that she's missing.
It's parked out front of their fucking...
It's parked across the street in a car park across from their headquarters. Now, I don't know whether that was a stroke of genius or just whether he was just trying to rub it in the police face. Because you got to remember, this dude is a serial killer. He may be at the beginning of his serial killer game, but they often like to mess with police and sort of show that they've got everything under control, they've got the power, and the police have no idea what is going on.
So it was only 2 weeks before he was ready to go again, and he drove around a lot looking for vulnerable women before coming across a girl hitchhiking the Sterling Highway in Claremont. Susanna was a 15-year-old high school student who had just finished a part-time shift in a restaurant. Her dad, who would normally be there waiting to walk her home, didn't show up. But David and Catherine were there.
The one time, like, oh my God, I cannot imagine how bad her dad would feel not turning up that one time to pick her up or being late or whatever.
Do we know why he didn't turn up?
No, I couldn't find anything. He was a doctor though, so whether he got held back at work or something, I don't know. But he was supposed to be a super protective dad, and that's why he would walk her home. She's only young. It was her first job. He didn't particularly want her to take this job. And then just for some reason, this one time he was either late or didn't show up. And it only takes one time.
Lucky for David and Catherine.
Yeah, of course.
So Susanna was put at knife point and then tied up and driven back to the Moorhouse Street house. David wished to keep this one longer, so made her write to her parents and call them to tell them she was okay and had just taken off with some friends to Queensland. What a fuckhead.
Which none of these parents fell for this. None of them did, but... When you go to police and say, my child is missing, and they go, have you heard any contact, like, have you had any contact from her? And you go, yeah, she sent a letter or she made a phone call. They'll go, well, she said that she's with friends. Kids this age do this stuff. And they're not going to, not anything against the police, but they are going to be like, well, she says she's fine. What do you want us to do?
So Susanna was chained to the bed, gagged and raped over several days. Catherine even joined them in the bed on one occasion. On occasion. Fuck. Okay. Mm-hmm. When they were finished with Susanna, David tried to strangle her, but she fought like hell, and instead David forced sleeping pills down her throat. Once she was asleep, David turned to Catherine and said, "Prove your love to me," and handed her a rope. Catherine tightened the rope around Susanna's neck until she stopped breathing.
That is fucking horrific.
I have no words.
Serial killer count. Is that one
this
kill
is
each or 2 kills? Do they become a serial killer when they get to the third one as a combined couple, or is it...
See, not that I have any idea what I'm talking about, but I believe that this was his way of making her just as responsible for these murders as him.
So that he wasn't going to be
going
down alone.
See, now you're on my level. Now you've not only joined me in the bedroom, but you have now taken this woman's life. That binds them more. He has more control now. If there's any chance that she's going to go to the police or anything, then you're just as responsible as I am.
This guy is a piece of work.
Yeah, no, he's completely... They all are completely manipulative, completely charming, and everything just seems to fall in their lap. Continue.
So they drove her body back to the Gleneagle Forest and buried her adjacent to Mary's body. I've always been impressed how these motherfuckers can remember where they buried
him in a forest.
I think it's just such a big part of their ritual and the enjoyment they get out of it that you're not going to forget that type of thing.
You're still driving fucking, however many hours down a dark road into a dark forest.
Yeah, well, see, there are 50-odd Ks to that forest, and... That's a pretty long drive, and then you've got to get out and find, forests. Let's face it, they're not small. So I guess he just had this specific
No, it's obviously a
connection
point of
to,
excitement to them.
yeah,
It's just-
it's definitely a point of excitement.
They got good fucking memories. Not even 2 weeks later, on the 1st of November, 31-year-old Nolene Patterson was driving... Nolene, was driving home from her job as a flight attendant when she ran out of petrol. Offering a lift to a petrol station, Nolene got into the Birnie's car, where she was held at knife point, and drove back to the Moorhouse Street, where she was held captive and repeatedly raped. David became attached to Nolene and kept putting her off her murder. Catherine knew this woman was a very attractive woman and became extremely jealous. Nolene was held for 3 days before Catherine lost her shit and, holding a knife to her own throat, told David, "It's me or her, choose."
Okay,
Where are
so
their children at this time?
they don't have any children
There's
with them
no
at this
children with
time.
them?
Kerry
Okay.
took Tanya. She abandoned all of her children. They didn't have any
That's right,
together.
sorry,
So
forgot that
it was
part.
literally just their
Yep.
perverted love nest at this
Yep.
point.
So David forced some sleeping pills down Nolene's throat and strangled her to death. They then drove her body back to the Glen Eagle forest, and Catherine took great pleasure in burying Nolene in another shallow grave.
Like, she really enjoyed that. She was so jealous of this woman. Okay, because, she was a flight attendant for Ansett. Remember Ansett?
Yes.
Flight attendants, they usually have to be, not that they
Tall,
discriminate or
slim.
anything,
Back then
but
they
they
did.
are
Back then they
attractive.
absolutely discriminated.
Yeah.
Well, that she was super attractive. She was obviously very well dressed, all of that type of thing. So she was really intimidated by this woman, and because he kept prolonging the kill, she was like, she was really worried that this woman was going to come in between them. So that's why she lost it. And she really, really enjoyed throwing the dirt on her shallow grave. So she's
Crazy.
escalating too.
I don't know if escalating is the right word at this point when you're digging shallow graves for people.
No, but she's taking some more enjoyment in it.
3 days later, they took another woman, 21-year-old Denise Brown. She was abducted while waiting at a bus stop just off the Stirling Highway. She was gagged and driven to the Moorhouse Street, where she was confined and raped. Denise, too, was forced to contact friends and tell them that she was staying with a friend for a couple of days and that she was okay. Denise was in the home for 2 days before she was forced to take sleeping pills, and once unconscious, they drove her 50 k's in the opposite directions to the Wanneroo Pine Plantation.
Oh, we're changing places now.
Yeah, so
Where you've got
it's the
3 bodies
same
in one
distance, but it's just in the opposite direction. They never say why they decided to go to a different location, but yeah, the Wanneroo Pine Forest, that's just where they decided to go next.
Maybe he didn't want to go back there because Nolene was there.
Maybe that's a good point. Okay, well done.
Kudos for me.
Like, I did not. I was sitting there for ages going, why? Why would you do that? And it might have been Catherine.
He felt
Maybe
something.
Catherine was like, I don't want to go back there. Like,
I think Nolene was the reason
so
for that.
you can visit your little happy place. Like, let's go somewhere else. Yeah, that's actually a really good point.
My job here is done.
Detective Kate on the case.
So once there, David raped her in the car, and once night fell, he raped her again outside the car while Catherine stabbed a knife into Denise's neck. So Catherine's gone
While
well
he
and
was
truly
fucking
beyond the
her,
point of
sorry,
being
while
a
he was
victim.
fucking her, she was stabbing
She
him.
stabbed her. Whether that was
Wow.
a jealousy thing or a planned thing or a spontaneous thing, I have
This
no
is
idea.
just two fucked up individuals.
That would have
Yeah.
been just a get-off thing, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thinking Denise is dead,
It's horrible.
they put her in a shallow grave and begun to bury her when she all of a sudden started gasping
No, she
for air.
didn't.
Yep.
No, she didn't.
Using the shovel, he
Oh my God.
hit her on the head.
Oh my God.
He did.
You wrote, using the shovel, he is her in the head nuts. She continued.
He is her in
I
the head
am
nuts.
in the head. I was up for a very long time writing this. Cut me some slack. Do you want me to read it for
Okay,
you?
so I think what you're trying to say is he hit her in the head with a shovel,
He
but she
used the shovel
continued to
that-
try and get up.
Okay, look.
So he took an axe to her.
Yes, so the shovel that he used to dig the poor girl's shallow grave was handy. So he hit her in the head with it and it didn't work. She tried to regain her stance and he went, well, fuck, I'll take an axe to you, which
Wow.
is just like
Extreme.
horrific. Beyond fucked. Is that a
Just
lot
like
of
the
rain?
fucking
It just
rain.
absolutely started pissing down
It's
with
like
rain.
we got static. Okay, so Catherine was shaken by this experience and was reluctant to continue in their spree. But David reassured her it would be better next time, you know. Like, what the fuck? She's already stabbed people on the neck and, you know, buried shallow grave.
I think it's the fact that she didn't die straight away. Like, she kept fighting for life. And that, I can see how that would shake you, even though you've already done the most horrific things that you can.
So that's the measuring point of better next time, is they'll die quicker.
Yeah, like next time it'll be better. Next time we'll kill her right.
So
like,
we're already planning our next time.
Oh, yeah, I don't think they had any intentions of stopping.
No, they're full
They
on.
are, like,
Their pace is insane.
This is in the span, over a span of like 2 months.
Yeah, this isn't
like
long.
they don't stop.
Well,
They do one. They don't take like a year long.
It's a 2-week
break
break almost.
Yeah.
Not even. This next one's 3 days later when they
Are we on
abducted.
body? Sorry. Are we on body count 4?
That's 4, yep. So 3 days later, number 5, 17-year-old Kate Moyer. M-O-I? Moyer.
Kate M.
It's just
Kate M. Sorry, Kate. Anyway, you're dead, so. On the 9th of November, while she...
continue to read before you say that she's dead.
Okay, well...
Spoiler alert!
Oh, okay. Read on. On the 9th of November, while she hitchhiked the Stirling Highway alone, she was bound, gagged, and taken back to the Birnie house where she was raped and tortured.
Okay, so notice she was tortured this time. Everywhere that I read said that this time she was raped and tortured. Now, there are actually interviews from her point of view. I didn't actually get through her interview because I thought basically that's like a survival story on its own. So I didn't go into that, but I just thought I would point out the fact that this is the only time where it said that she was tortured.
Lovely.
Not that repeated rape isn't a form of torture, but they said raped and tortured.
So the next day, while Catherine was distracted answering the door, oh, yeah, I actually know that. Yeah, I remember this shit.
Now, there are a
she
few
was in the
different
lounge
accounts
room,
of
hey,
this,
yeah.
and I didn't know which one to say, so I went with one of them. But there were some people saying that she actually went to use the bathroom, convinced Catherine while David was at work that she needed to go to the bathroom, then the doorbell rang and she managed to jump the window. But then there are other reports that she was actually in the bedroom. But continue. I'll be quiet.
So Kate hid her smokes and he... What?
Wait,
her.
this sounds like me.
She
I
hid
hid
her
my
smoke.
smokes.
She was actually really smart. She decided that she would hide her cigarettes and her handbag in that room to later on prove that she had actually been there. So obviously she realised that this was her chance to escape. And she thought, you know what, I'm just going to make sure
Plant
that I can
evidence.
say, look, I was here. This is what happened. So she did. She left her belongings in a hidden spot.
So she ran through the streets. Oh, she jumped out almost completely naked out of her window and then ran through the streets until she found a grocery store where the shop assistant called the police. That's some shit you don't expect while you're in the grocery shop.
No, not at all. But fucking good on her because we all know where she was heading. Like, amazing woman. She got the fuck out.
Vince Cattage and Paul Ferguson were the two detectives who spoke to Kate. She told the officers of her horrific time at number 3 Moorhouse Street. Kate told them that they would find her bag and cigarettes under the bed, which would become proof of her stay. Smart girl. Police went to the house, but no one was home, so they waited. They didn't have to wait long before Catherine came home and they arrested her. David was found at work and was also taken into custody at Fremantle Police Station. They were questioned together. They both told police that Kate had willingly come to the house to party and do drugs with them, and that all the sexual activity had been consensual. What, including the fucking torture?
Yeah. Can I just point out again, like, obviously reports aren't necessarily complete fact, but I'm just saying if I were questioning two potential rapists,
Suspects?
I would not question them together. That makes it so easy for them to feed off each other's lies and corroborate a story. So I wasn't 100% sure that I believed that they were questioned together, but all the reports I found said that they were originally questioned together and came up with this story of her just wanting to come over, smoke weed, they partied, and then eventually it led to consensual sex.
Torture.
Oh,
Yeah.
You'd have a cover story for that shit, whether you were interviewed together or not, wouldn't you?
Well,
Probably.
see, I don't think they planned on getting caught. This was Catherine's
Yeah, but
mistake.
you still get ready.
This was Catherine's mistake. Like, she got distracted. She let her guard down. She was obviously more concerned about the person at the door potentially finding out that they have a captive in the house. So she just, like, from what I can gather, she just, like, dropped everything, ran to the door. Doesn't sound like they would have a planned cover story for that. But if they did, then just all the more intelligence.
Well, I would. Just saying. Definitely would. Anyway, overnight, both Catherine and David were separated, and that's when they refused to talk anymore. The police tried everything to make them talk, but nothing was working. So without their confession, the police would only be able to charge them with the abduction and rape of Kate, and police were starting to suspect they may be linked to the disappearances of other women because, if you remember, Kate had been questioned. You have to explain this.
What did the rest of that say?
Well, while she was questioned, she told police how she was forced to let her family and friends know she
Yeah,
was
so that
okay.
became the link. They didn't have links between these women. I mean, apart from the Sterling Highway, these women were different ages. They, you know, some worked, some were going to high school. They didn't have a link. So women were going missing, but they weren't connecting them as being, they were going missing from, like, they weren't.
In the same boat.
Yeah, exactly. So this was the beginning of them linking these murders and disappearances.
Right.
Because
the previous one had made
phone calls,
and
sent
letters.
and things. So they were like, oh, wait a minute. There's reports of this and this, parents being suspicious, friends being suspicious of these so-called letters and phone calls, and then them never returning home. So that made them go, oh, shit, maybe this escaped victim is linked to the ones that never made it home. So that's when it actually turns into a proper investigation. Because this wasn't widely reported. This wasn't in the news before it got to this point. This was just like women.
You've got some
taking off.
teenage runaways.
Yeah, this is people taking off and people being, upset about that. But as far as the police were concerned, this stuff happens all the time. People just take off and do their own thing.
So it was after hours of interrogation at around 7 p.m. When one of the detectives said, "It's getting dark. Why don't you just show me where the bodies are so we can dig them up?" And surprisingly, David replied, "Okay, there is 4 of them."
Wow.
Yeah.
Or he's just obviously
Like, fuck.
They
You
all
would
wanna-
not expect that response at all.
Well, you don't want to get caught, but then when you're caught, you want the notoriety for what you've done.
Yeah, definitely. But
So now this will get me a lighter sentence, perhaps, because now I'm cooperating.
But who
Blame
is
it
a
all on
detective
Yep.
goes after hours and hours of exhausting interrogation?
Where are the bodies?
How about you just let us know where you've buried them? Who the fuck expects them to go, okay.
Yeah, no worries.
Let's go. Hop in the car. Let's go for a drive, mate.
So naturally, they told Catherine of David's confession. She also broke her silence, and the couple were taken by task force of police north along Wanneroo Road and through the pine forests. Police noted that David was relaxed and chatty on the drive, so much that David realised that
Chilled. Just saying.
You're telling me to chill?
No, he was chilled. He was totally cool with this.
Ah, right. Well,
He was loving it. Absolutely
this
loving
is his
it.
time. This is his
This is
beginning
his time
of
to
his
collect
fame.
his trophy
Like,
now.
Yeah, this is like,
He
look
gets to
what
go
I've
back
done.
and relive all his shit, show him all how
Yep.
he did it, explain it all.
And he
It's
was
like,
totally chilled.
And be proud.
it's like, yeah.
Oh my God.
Oh, it's so horrible.
So after a short walk into the forest, David said, "Stop." He gestured to a mound of earth and said, "Dig there." Police uncovered the body of Denise. Police were left to guard the crime scene while David directed to the convoy south to the Glen Eagle Forest. He led police into the forest to a track, 35 metres from the track, where police found the decomposing body of Mary, who had gone missing on the 6th of October. A bit further down the track, David then pointed out the burial site of Susanna, the 15-year-old girl who hadn't been seen since the 19th of October.
Here are my trophies. I don't know, are they trophies when they're... Oh, I guess, in a way.
Yeah, it's just like his own little personal graveyard memorial
Yeah,
site of
I mean, there's
fuckness.
loads of serial killers that did that, like Ted Bundy. He had his own little graveyard that he would revisit even, just to, relive the memory. So he was
even fathom.
basically showing them his pride and joy.
This is my pool room.
So talking of pride and joy, Catherine was all too happy to show the detectives where she'd buried the body of Nolene. Catherine made sure to tell police just how much she disliked Nolene and that she was happy Nolene was dead, then spat on her shallow grave.
No, she did not.
Like, as a police officer, keeping your cool while watching that fucking crazy bitch spit on a victim's grave. Like, my God, that is fucked.
So,
Just saying.
on the 12th of November, as the couple stood together with no legal representation and without entering a plea, the pair were charged with 4 counts of murder and 1 count of abduction and rape. Bail was refused.
As you do. Like, who the fuck would give them bail?
The hearing was on the 10th of February in 87. This attracted a large hostile crowd. David and Catherine pleaded guilty to all charges. When David was asked why he decided to plead guilty, he said, "It's the least I could do."
What the fuck?
Yeah.
Thank you for doing the
Well,
world
it's
a
true,
favour,
isn't it?
No,
David.
he literally gestured. Yeah, no, he literally gestured to the families and said, "It's the least I can do." Like, what
Here
a
you go.
fuck.
This is my
wanker.
gift to you.
Yeah, exactly. Like, here you go. I'm doing this for you. Aren't I a great guy?
So David was sentenced that day to 4 consecutive life sentences. The presiding judge, Justice Wallace, stamped his record never to be released, saying, "Each of these horrible crimes was premeditated, planned, and carried out cruelly and relentlessly over a comparatively short period. David should not be let out of prison ever."
No shit. Here.
David's psychiatric report said he had a profile of a serial killer. Well, he is a fucking serial. He's
Really?
killed 4 people.
Really?
Profile.
Yeah,
like-
I know, but they've got to have a psych report, and that is just saying that, yeah, this dude is a fucking serial killer.
So, well, thanks for your fucking time, mate. Anyway, I hope there's some better psychiatric reports on this dude.
I'm sure there is, but unless you wanted this to be a like 2-parter, I didn't dig
Just saying,
intensely.
case file was, I think, a 3-parter.
Well, we can't all be at case files level. Not that I have ever listened to an entire case file. Just saying.
Actually, I don't know if this one was. I can't remember.
No, I don't. Look, this could be a week-long fucking podcast if you want it to be. There is so much history and involvement. And then there's, like, Kate's survival story, which I'm sure is absolutely amazing. And I was going to do it from that point of view.
And the
but then I
forgotten,
thought-
like, 100
Yeah.
billion fucking children they had.
And I am
Yes.
not convinced that these were their only victims.
Catherine, on the other hand, did not match the profile of a serial killer, and professionals couldn't quite understand what motive led her to commit these crimes, with the psychiatrist saying it was one of the worst cases of personality dependence they had seen.
No shit.
Personality dependence. I like that.
Definitely.
Well,
Well,
you
I don't like
yeah,
that. I like those words.
classification.
No, I think that
Yes.
that psych report seems pretty spot on. But
That's
continue.
a severe case of personality dependence.
But continue, 'cause
I mean, they did say it's one of the worst cases. Anyway, apparently she admitted later to filling out all the psych evaluation forms incorrectly and just told them what she thought they wanted to hear, and also admitted later that this is all about power and how you can't know real power until you look them in the eye and take it all away.
So she
Wow.
is just as
As bad
fucked
as
as
him.
him.
Oh my
Like, she
Lord.
had them fooled. They thought she's just this little tag along. But no, she's a proper fucking psycho in
Psycho.
the end. Told you. Did you say told you? Yeah. He's usually right, and it really annoys me.
She was found sane enough to stand trial. Catherine Birnie received 4 consecutive life sentences by the Supreme Court of Western Australia and would be eligible for parole in 2007. So they both got off on the rape and abduction one. I just want to point out, not that it really matters, but they did. However, she was consistently denied parole. Catherine is currently imprisoned and the what the fuck?
Oh, wait.
Up?
Bandy Up, that's it. It's Bandy Up. It's fucking weird, but yeah, it's Bandy Up prison.
So Bandy Up Women's Prison, where she works in the library. A few years after her first application for parole was denied, the new Attorney General, Christian Porter, revoked Catherine's non-parole period, making her the second Australian woman to have her papers marked never to be released.
I also read that she was the 3rd woman, so I just put 2nd woman in because it sounded better.
At first, David Birnie was held at the maximum security Fremantle prison, but he was quickly moved to solitary confinement for his own protection from other prisoners.
Fuck that shit.
He
know,
was
why are they investing in
but he
helping
was
these cunts?
being constantly beaten by other
Good.
prisoners. Like, yeah, I see that point of view. Fantastic, but at the end of the day, you want this motherfucker to live out his life sentence. I'm all
Continually being beaten. That's
I'm,
how I would
I'm
like him
all
to give it out.
I'm all against the death penalty. I don't think that we should stoop to that level. But yeah, but you know what? Solitary confinement is its own fucking punishment. I think
Agree.
you'd find a lot of prisoners that go through solitary confinement and say, you know what? Let me back in Gen Pop because I'd rather be beaten than be alone. Because being alone
Very
is
true.
torture.
So they actually converted old death row cells into the solitary confinement room for him, and he stayed there until the prison was closed in 1991.
Which is now a historical site if you ever want to visit it.
During their incarceration, David and Catherine wrote to each other on more than 2,500 times. Jesus Christ.
That is
That
a
is a
lot
dependency.
of. That's a lot of letters exchanged.
crazy.
Couldn't be bothered.
Well, you're in prison. You don't have much else on,
Years before...
and they're in love. Love.
You're a dickhead.
I'm not saying it's good love. It's crazy love, but they're in love, and they were separated, and we both know they didn't like that.
Years before Catherine's parole proceedings in 2007, she had cut all ties with David in hopes she would one day get out of prison. David had in previous years told police that he and Catherine had committed more murders and that if he could have access to Catherine, he would tell all. This request was denied after Catherine refused any negotiations. After not replying to many of David's letters, he realised the relationship was over, but apparently wished her well as he understood why. Oh, what a lovely guy.
Wow.
See, he's got a heart.
He's a
He
gentleman,
wanted
isn't
her
he?
to get her parole and to live a life, even though he knew he was fucked. That's love.
Fucking hell, Sasha. All right. On the 7th of October 2005, at 4 a.m., David Birnie was found hanging from his bedsheet, in another hard-to-pronounce prison. Oh, my God. I don't even know how to begin with this one.
Just do it in an
Arena.
Aussie bogan.
Fucking, there is no Aussie... Nah, there's no pronoun. This is a fucking weird prison, man. Casuarina? Casuarina.
That wasn't that hard.
Casuarina prison.
That's not that hard.
It's because it's
You see it spelled.
it's CASU, like it's
CASUARINA.
It's the Casuarina, but people will just say Casuarina prison.
He was under investigation for the rape of another prisoner and due to appear in court the following day. No one claimed his body.
So after everything, this son of a fucking bitch took his own life.
Yeah.
So he got the easy way out.
Yeah, and he didn't even answer for the rape of the other prisoner because that was scheduled for the following day. Now, I did read reports that he had like the pauper's funeral and was buried in an unmarked grave. And then I also read reports that no one claimed his body and he was cremated. So who the fuck actually knows what happened to his body? But the point is, nobody wanted him and nobody cared that he died.
But he just lived his best life, really, didn't he? Did what he wanted during it and then
Well,
took
he
it when he wanted to.
definitely did what he wanted.
It's all in his control.
Yep.
He definitely did what he
Absolutely.
wanted, that's for sure. Like, you can't go through all of that and say that you didn't do exactly what you wanted to do, when you wanted to do it, no matter who it hurt.
So, funnily enough, in January of this year, number 3 Moorhouse Street went up for sale.
Yes, it did.
It's still standing.
It's seriously, it is like our house. It is an old brick house and it's been gutted on the inside and it just looks like a lovely, bright family starter home.
There would be a feel in that.
But I clicked through the photos on realestate.com and I saw the bedrooms and I was like, nope, fuck that.
Oh, really?
They'll totally
nope,
turn
nope,
that
nope.
into some tourist attraction
Yeah.
type deal. So, anyway, it's under offer. The house is up for sale and under offer.
It's been up since January and I was looking at it and it was still up for sale and then I checked last night and it is now under offer. So
How was that not bulldozed many
no,
years
the person
ago?
who lived there before apparently lived there for like 20 years or something. And she was like, "Oh, I'm from the UK, and all those houses have a history." And I'm like, "Yeah, but not
Oh, wow.
necessarily that fucking history." But, each to their own. I'd rather take a haunted house or a demon-filled house, personally, but...
Look, if anywhere's going to get haunted, that's a pretty good place to
I know,
have it happen.
because not all victims were killed there, but a lot were. And it's not just the killing, it's the horrific things that went on in the bedroom. In the bedroom of all places, like your sacred space. And knowing that stuff's there is just not cool with me.
That was horrific. That whole story was horrific.
Thanks for that, Sasha.
I'm so glad that I can now delete that information from my brain and do not have to think about them anymore.
No, but now you've got the next one to think of.
Yeah, but I think a
Be more
light-hearted ghost story, perhaps a demon haunting, demon possession might be more on the card.
No, thank you.
Because it is a histories of the fuck,
I have a
so it
Rip
can
Snorter
be anything.
coming.
You're next.
Yeah.
And then Kate's next with a little Snowtown...
Your personal connection to
My
Snowtown.
personal
connection to
connections.
the Snowtown murders.
Wow.
Every Aussie will know about the Snowtown murders, possibly international.
This whole podcast could just be a history on Kate's fuckedness.
Yeah. Kate's history of the fucked.
I feel it would have a very good following.
Certainly a lot of stories to tell. That was a rough one, but they can get a lot rougher, trust me. That was, you'll think that was mild, Kate, in comparison to what I'm going to throw at you.
I'm scared.
And we all know Kate will wet her pants
I'm scared.
at almost anything. So you made it through, though. Well done.
Thank you.
Well done. All right, I'm going.
Leave it here?
Yep.
What time is it?
10:47. That's not bad.
That's not bad. I really thought we'd be here till about 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
Well done.
We did it.
Well done.
We smashed it.
Okay, so I'm Sasha.
I'm Kate.
And I don't like saying my name again, but I'm Cameron. Fucking hell.
We're married, by the way.
Yeah.
Just in
I'm
case you
doing this
didn't know, Cameron and I are married, and Kate is our long-standing friend of 15 years.
Yay.
And this is a history of the fuck.
Fucked.
Actually, no, it's not. It's histories of the fuck.
Okay, redo
Can't even
that
get the
bit.
damn name right.
Should we
God.
say it all together like a bunch of nerds?
No.
This is the histories of the fuck. No, well, you say it then. You sign off. Fine, do it yourself. Go on.
You can be the sign-off man.
Better do it good, though.
Thanks for listening.